Good evening, I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Canada has mandated significant changes to administering Jordan's principle in hopes of expediting decisions on requests and addressing the soaring and long-standing demands. APTN's Sierra Bettens brings you the details.
Indigenous Services Canada has announced new operational changes to Jordan's principle to, in their words, help the long-term sustainability of the program. Now, applicants must demonstrate how the request meets the distinct needs of the First Nations child and how the child experienced gaps, delays, or denial in accessing government services. Certain items and services will no longer be approved. In a Tuesday interview with APTN, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haiju discussed why the changes were needed.
We have to have a better process to streamline requests and to make sure that the information with each request is really clearly identified to, first of all, determine, in some cases, who the child is, and secondly, to determine how that child not having access to that services is in any way delaying or harming their outcomes from a health or a social perspective.
Between 2021 and 2022, there were 614,250 Jordan's principal requests. In 2023 to 2024, that jumped to nearly 3 million requests, a 367% increase. All future requests will require a letter of support from a health professional, educational professional, or elder or knowledge keeper that demonstrates how it fulfills an unmet need. Requests including the purchase or construction of homes, tickets to sporting events, non-medical international travel, administrative fees, school-related requests will no longer be approved unless funding is required by substantive equality.
We believe at the federal government that every child does deserve equity and access to education supports and to health supports to ensure the best success for that child. But we also believe that provinces and territories have a responsibility within their own jurisdiction to provide equity in education.
Back in December, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs held a meeting in Winnipeg where First Nations leaders and administrators voiced concerns about the Jordan's Principle system.
In my close to 30 years as a administrator of programs in the First Nations, never been involved in a situation where there were no guidelines for expenditures. There were no guidelines for ineligible activities. There were no guidelines for eligible activities.
Jordan's principal requests are divided into individual and group requests and are labeled as urgent or non-urgent. In 2022, ISC implemented a back-to-basics approach, allowing the applicant to determine whether the request was urgent. However, this resulted in a 900% increase in urgent requests between 2021 and 2022 and 2022 to 2023. It also resulted in seemingly non-essential items and services, including modeling headshots, gaming consoles, and zipline kits, being classified as urgent. In late January, the father of Jordan River Anderson, the program's namesake, condemned the alleged misuse, aiming his criticism at the First Nation program administrators.
My son's name is being misused and misled. It's sad. We trusted you guys. You were to be born leaders. To be born leaders, not to be born fools.
According to ISC, Jordan's Principle has received $8.8 billion in funding to date, and more than 8.7 million products, services, and supports have been approved since 2016. As of December 2024, $6.44 billion was spent on Jordan's Principle requests. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba RCMP have provided an update on the death of April Woodhouse from Pinnamutang First Nation, located about 240 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. The family raised concerns over her death that happened on January 31st. RCMP say the 50-year-old was located outside the steps of a home, freezing cold and in medical distress. Woodhouse was then transported to hospital where she later died. According to the RCMP, an autopsy was conducted last weekend. It confirmed the cause of death was not because of any physical injuries, nor was it due to exposure. The cause of death remains under investigation as RCMP awaits further test results from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. Rose Stagg, April's sister, told CTV News she is not satisfied with the results and has proof Woodhouse had bruises on her body. A 13-year-old boy, Eric Omisu, was stabbed to death on February 5th at an Edmonton Light Rail train station, but it's unclear what happened, and now his family is looking for answers. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
It just doesn't seem real. It's like this nightmare I can't wake up from.
Rhonda Spence is mourning the loss of her grandson, Eric Omisu. He was stabbed at the McEwen Light Rail train in downtown Edmonton on February 5th. In a statement released 2 days later, Edmonton police say that Omisu was with a group of 3 youth and an 18-year-old who assaulted a man and woman in their 30s. The statement says the two groups did not know each other. However, Spence alleges police told her the two groups did know each other and that the man and woman did have weapons. So she wants to know more details of her grandson's death.
How did my grandson get killed? Like, did he, was he trying to save somebody? Was he part of a fight? Like, did he jump in trying to help somebody? Was he a part of, like, did he do it? Or like, what happened?
Chastity Phillips is Omisu's aunt. She says the lack of details is causing people to guess what happened.
It's just harmful. It's just so ambiguous, and it has just left open like so much room for interpretation, and people just fill in all these narratives, and we've had like, cruel things said about Eric.
Police have charged the 3 youths and the 18-year-old with aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, and possession of a weapon dangerous to the public. Rhonda says Eric was a good person.
Humorous, joking, loving, always vibrant spirit. All the answers, whatever answer, are not going to bring him back. But as a family, we deserve to have the truth of what happened to my grandson.
APTN News asked Edmonton police for an update, but they provided no further details. Eric Omisu's funeral will be held Friday. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The United States of Congress put forth the Red, White, and Blue Land Act of 2025 on Monday. It authorizes President Donald Trump to enter into negotiations to acquire Greenland and rename it Red, White, and Blue Land. The bill was proposed by Republican member of Congress Earl Buddy Carter. Most of Greenland is inhabited by Inuit, making up for 89% of the population. Greenland has been controlled by Denmark for approximately 3 centuries, becoming a district of Denmark in 1953. Greenland officials have yet to publicly respond to this bill. Kebaowek First Nation northeast of Sudbury near the Quebec border has been in a years-long dispute over storing nuclear waste on its ancestral land. As APTN Savannah Craig reports, provincial party Quebec Solidaire announced it supports the Kebaowek yesterday in the National Assembly of Quebec.
The Algonquin nations' fight to protect their territory from nuclear waste has expanded from the federal government to the Quebec government.
And today I stand before you in partnership with the Quebec Solidaire, the Parti Québécois, whose support for our cause has been unwavering.
Just over a year ago, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission issued a permit to build a low-level radioactive disposal site in Chalk River, Ontario, just a kilometer from the Ottawa River. Despite Kebaowek being just over 200 kilometers from the site, Chief Lance Heyman is upset with the decision. Quebec Solidaire critic for Indigenous issues Manon Massé is demanding action from Quebec's Minister of Indigenous Affairs, Ian Lafrenière.
We know that in the environmental law, we have an article that says that if you're not sure, it's called précaution. If you're not sure, choose the precaution side. So that's why we're asking, by side of the First Nation, that the Gouvernement du Québec have to say no to this project.
Et comme mon collègue le dit, pas à une, mais à deux reprises, on a rappelé les devoirs au gouvernement fédéral.
Lafrenière says his government wrote to Ottawa and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and he has been in contact with nearby communities, but he says this issue is the federal government's responsibility.
Dans notre cas, on veut que le fédéral fasse sa job.
Chief Heyman says he has also received support at the federal level from the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party. When asked about allying with sovereigntist parties, Chief Heyman says he does not share the same viewpoint on Quebec independence.
When we talk about independence, it causes me some heartburn, but at the same time, we need to build alliances and we need to build support from all the parties.
Chief Heyman says the current focus is protecting ancestral lands and waterways from potential nuclear contamination.
Because if we don't have that political support, it's really hard sometimes to get our agendas in front of politicians who ultimately can, make a decision that could help our cause.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Quebec City.
Time now for a short break, but when we return, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak is in Washington this week. We'll tell you why when we come back. Welcome back. Polar Knowledge Canada officially opened its first Northern Satellite office in Whitehorse on Tuesday. The federal agency is a departmental corporation under the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, or CERNAC. Its purpose is to support research across Canada's north, that includes testing the performance of clean energy technologies in Arctic communities and studying diseases that affect northern wildlife. The agency is headquartered in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. Officials say the new Whitehorse office will enable it to foster stronger relationships with researchers and Indigenous knowledge holders in the Yukon, especially as climate change continues to be a growing concern.
Indigenous people sustain themselves off the land, so we want to make people aware of what's happening, and we want to be able to help them to figure out exactly how we can assist them to make changes in the way they provide for themselves and their families.
Last month, some community members in Dauphin, Manitoba were alarmed by an order from the head of the Mountain View School Division to have God Save the King played during morning announcements. In Manitoba, provincial law requires students to stand for God Save the King in schools, but it hasn't been enforced in decades. It was recently imposed by Board Chair Jason Greba this January. However, community members challenged Greba's directive, calling it a colonial practice with a negative impact on Indigenous students. The issue went to a school board meeting in mid-January, and a majority of the trustees voted to immediately stop playing the anthem. This isn't the first time the school division has been in trouble. Last year, Paul Coffey, a Mountain View School Division trustee in Western Manitoba, faced condemnation for saying in a board meeting that residential schools started as a good thing, and also said he would continue to call Indigenous people Indians. Federal, provincial, and territorial leaders are all in Washington, D.C. today, meeting with business leaders and lawmakers. Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak is also in the U.S. Capitol meeting with tribal leaders. The National Chief joined Dennis Ward earlier from Washington. Here's that interview.
National Chief, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Dennis.
Can you tell us why it's important for you to be in Washington now and meeting with tribal leaders and others?
Oh, look, we met with U.S. tribes from, with the NCAI, the president, which is equivalent to, of course, the national chief in our country. And it was really nice to see President Mark Macaro this morning again. I know that we'd met a year ago, and I know that NCAI and the Assembly of First Nations do have a working relationship dating back 25 years. And, you just never know how important those relationships are. I know that there's been a lot of cross-border trade since time immemorial amongst First Nations and, American tribes, people. There's been trade amongst our people since the beginning of time. And I think this morning was really refreshing. They were so happy that, Canadians as First Nations, we were there talking to them. And, we invited them to the assembly, the next AFN assembly in July. And we are also going to be establishing a working group with each other leading up to July. And I also reached out to our first First Nations premier. I lifted him up in front of all the NCAI folks and the tribes, American tribes. And so he had also committed to making sure that we try and host a Canada, US /NCAI /AFN, type of event on Treaty 1 territory when we all meet in July. But I think it's so important that cross-border trade, there's just so many uncertainties right now. And I really believe that relationships between leaders, met many chiefs down here this morning, they're just eager to come up. They want to meet Canadian leadership. They want to meet First Nations leadership, First Nations people and communities. And I just think that it's a time to collaborate when there's all these talk of tariffs, but we never had tariffs like that with each other. We had trade. And so I know that sometimes those discussions aren't always aligned with other levels of government, but I think that it's important that we speak nation to nation.
National Chief, what are some of the concerns you're hearing from First Nations when it comes to trade and border mobility, tariffs?
Oh, certainly. Look, we've been hearing about people being harassed at the at the borders the last couple of weeks, and we've been hearing concerns from different leadership. There was a chief in northern Saskatchewan who had many concerns last week. There was another one in Ontario. And, I think we've heard the same from our counterparts here in the U.S., that they've experienced the same type of, border issues. And so there's just so much to talk about. And then, of course, there's U.S. The U.S. is such a big part of even, our economies, wild rice, for instance, tobacco trade. There was all these discussions that were had today. And, these things have happened since time immemorial, and, they shouldn't be part of, whatever Canada and the U.S. want to do with each other. First Nations and, the tribes here on this side of the medicine line, that we continue our talks and we continue to push and make sure that people recognize that we are sovereign people and that all this land traditionally was Indian land. And I think that it was a starting conversation this morning, really good one. And, they're just so thrilled to be coming up to Canada. And I know that there'll be invites coming, of course, for us to visit them in their territories as well.
National Chief, closer to home here, we wanted to talk about child welfare, which of course remains a big issue. Earlier this week, Minigojibee Anishinaabe Chief Derek Nepenak said he wanted to opt into the discussions on child welfare reform that the Chiefs of Ontario and Anishinaabe Nation are involved in. Do you think individual nations should be able to opt in?
When it comes to Chief Nepenak's statements, I have full respect for Chief Nepenak. And I think he was speaking on behalf of his community, which I absolutely respect. And he is not the only chief that is saying that. The chief is free to engage the government, of course, directly. And he has done it as he has done in the past. He's a very strong leader. With regards to the AFN setting up committees as national chief, I have to follow the resolutions of chiefs in assembly. Chiefs voted for the establishment of a new committee at our last assembly. So we will continue to call for Canada to return to the table on long-term reform. And of course, at the July assembly, so chiefs will be free to propose any ideas that they choose to. And I encourage them to get their own laws ready, write their own laws for their children and for their families, and don't accept anything less than $47.8 billion when you're reforming the system. There's a ground floor now, and I think First Nations should never accept anything less than that. It should be more and beyond.
National Chief, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here, and safe travels on your way back from the capital down there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Photo of the day and weather is up next. Plus, the Paw Trappers Festival kicks off today in Manitoba and wraps up this weekend. We'll bring you some of the highlights. Thanks for staying with us. Time now for our photo of the day. It was another beautiful sunny morning to wake up and give thanks out there. This picture was sent in without any information about the sender or the picture, but we liked it so much we just had to share it with you. Remember to always include some details about your photo along with your name. Send us your photo you'd like to see here at share@aptn.ca and you just might be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east, -5 in Charlottetown, sunny in St. John's at -7. -12 in Cartwright, sun in Happy Valley Goose Bay at -15. Saguenay -12, Quebec City -9. Sarnia -3, Toronto 2. Timmins -12, Wawa -8. Puckadowagan -24, Thompson partly cloudy and -22. -21 in Princess Harbour, Dauphin -22. Saskatoon -24, Regina -25. Meadow Lake -22, La Ronge same temperature. Grand Prairie -9, Fort McMurray -21. Calgary -13, Lethbridge -12. 2 in Campbell River, Kamloops -7. Sand Spit 3, Prince Rupert 1. -16 in Beaver Creek, Mayo -18. -24 in Fort Simpson, Wrigley -24. -20 in Sax Harbor, Polituck -25. -31 in Chesterfield, Baker Lake -31. And Resolute -15, Arctic Bay sunny and -17. It's that time of year again where people gather to celebrate the rich culture and history of part of the northern way of life at the 2025 Northern Manitoba Trappers Festival. Visitors, dignitaries, spectators, and dog mushers will gather in the Paw to celebrate their 78th annual Northern Manitoba Trappers Festival. Some events for the festival include a parade, a fur queen competition, a king trapper competition, as well as a junior jigging contest. They also have dog sled races with total prizes worth over $55,000. The festival's website says the goal of the festival is to get people together to honor the rich culture of trapper history by keeping traditions alive in 2025. With a lot of different events, there's a little something for everyone there. The festival runs from February 12th through until Sunday, February 16th. And that's your evening newscast for this Wednesday, February 12th. We're back for your daytime and evening newscast, same place, same time tomorrow. Make sure to join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho kwana. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Ekse.